Because some of these ICE agents, well, they're staying there during some of the raids that they are conducting in and around Los Angeles County. Right now, though, we have to go out to some of these immigrant rights activists in Boyle Heights, speaking out yet again, live. Listen.
Workers. They're not criminals. We're seeing people in Oxnard running through strawberry fields. We're seeing people at construction sites getting raided. And even today, even a senator from California was roughed up and put on the ground and put in handcuffs. So it shouldn't surprise us when one of the brave people from our community, one of the brave people who's willing to stand up against fascism, who's willing to stand up against these kidnappings of people from our community.
Here it's going to happen. Trump is getting his people out of the Middle East. It's going to happen. This is live right now from Israel. In Israel, there's alarms and sirens, and people are heading to the shelters. Maybe this is the time also to take over Gaza totally. If this is the moment, let's see how this night is going to develop. Let's see how this night is going to develop. Israel is under lockdown into this moment, in this moment right now. It's not exactly clear what's going on, but something is happening. Yeah, Iran is under attack by Israel in these moments. Let's go to Al Jazeera.
Joining us on the phone from Tehran. Tawhid, what more can you tell us about what is going on there in Tehran?
Well, it's about 3:46 local time here in Tehran, and based on what we have so far, sounds of several explosions have been heard across the capital, not necessarily at one particular point, and there are several of them. One of them was heard, and I personally heard that around 5-6 minutes ago. Another one was heard just in the heart of the capital around half an hour ago, and I can say that we've got at least 6-7 minimum explosion sounds reported to be heard in the city, in different parts of the city, western parts, the southern parts of the city, but still we know that the state TV has confirmed the happening of these explosions, but when it comes to the cause, so far we haven't officially heard anything from Iranian sources. And right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are footages, there are pictures coming from different parts of the city, including Chitgar part, including a neighborhood in the western part of the capital. We see smokes coming out from certain parts of the city. That's obviously could not be an accident, as we are hearing reports coming from the Israeli side saying that they have announced an emergency situation, meaning that there is going to be a possibility, a very strong possibility for them to be involved. We heard the statements from the Israeli defense minister and also the Israeli radio saying that the army, the air forces are said to be involved in this situation. And we know that so far the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is currently chairing an extraordinary meeting of the cabinet and the security mini cabinet, and that means a sort of systematic initiation or a serious situation that we are experiencing right now in the Iranian capital. I cannot confirm whether this explosions mean that other parts of
middle
the
of the night in
country have
Israel. People are in the shelters.
Not, but we have to also keep in mind that previously,
let's wait until we start getting more.
Weeks, we heard Israelis
we're
with their
getting
strong rhetoric of the
Iran.
possibility of attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, and
Iran
that could be there, but still we don't have any details on that. We don't have any specific confirmed information on that. We have to keep waiting for a couple of next minutes, if not hours.
See what they say over here in Israel. Okay, I'm gonna take the bong off the table because we're getting to this is like a serious what's going on. The cocaine can stay, but I'll take the bong off because it's just blocking the screen. Let's find the bong here. Israel במלחמה. Israel is attacking Iran at the moment. I think it was kind of a noticeable and could be predicted that Trump was taking out his people out of the Middle East embassies the last 48 hours, 72 hours. This was something big. This is happening. Okay, we're gonna get now an update from Israel about what's going on. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, Israel started with an attack on Iran. Yeah, we had this was obvious, you know. We saw what happened with Trump taking out the people from the embassy. It was That was a big, big sign. Okay. We're listening to channel 14 in Israel right now. If you want to add anything to the chat or something, I think the chats are on YouTube and on Twitch. We're also live on Facebook, but let's look at pictures from Iran.
The Army radio, the airspace has been closed down. There are already instructions
We're looking at pictures from Al Jazeera with the Israeli news channel in the background. On the left, we have a live feed of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Of course, just to make a point, this is all about Jerusalem. So now let's see what's going to happen in the Gaza in Gaza today. Is Israel going to make a push into Gaza and actually take over the territory? I think it's a possibility. Okay, then. So the people in Israel now can get out of the shelters, but Israel is anticipating to being attacked from Iran in right now. This is what's going on. Then the Israelis are staying close to the shelters, and we are at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning currently in Israel. Okay, let's go back to Al Jazeera. Let's go back to Jazeera.
Intends to hold another meeting with the Iranians at the weekend. Of course, it'll be up to the Iranians to decide whether or not they want to go. So Donald Trump has talked about no unnecessary wars. He campaigned on the fact that he didn't want, in his words, stupid wars in the Middle East. And even in the last few hours on Capitol Hill, some senior Republicans, people that are close to Donald Trump, were saying we don't want to be put in a position where Americans could die defending Israel. So it appears that Israel may have decided that this was a gamble worth taking, that the United States will always be by their side, and they've decided to push ahead with this attack, even if they didn't get a green light from the United States. But of course, as I say, we don't know exactly what the US position on this is at the moment. But what we're hearing, what has been reported, what we're trying to confirm is that the US were not involved in any way in these airstrikes in the last hour.
OK, Alan Fisher, live from Washington, D.C. Thank you for bringing us up to date on the US perspective there. Now, Al Jazeera's correspondent Ali Hasham joins us again live here in the studio. And we were just seeing some pictures there of residential buildings being hit in these at least 6 explosions in Tehran.
Well, it's clear now that there have been, of course, several strikes. We don't know whether these are airstrikes, submarine strikes, or surface-to-surface missiles. Till the moment, there's no any clear indication. However, we know that there are residential areas in Tehran that were hit, especially in the northeast and also towards the west. Now, according to some reports, these are areas where some major commanders in the IRGC live, and we could hear about targeted assassinations. Now, these are all speculations for now. All what we know is that this preliminary strike is going to be, at the beginning, as we're seeing now, it's going to hit the vital sections of this state, main personalities who are very active and instrumental in the military side, also vital institutions.
To the Israeli channel.
And of course, the Israelis are
funded by Iran.
To go
but there was Hezbollah, the Houthis. There are other militias in Iraq. We've heard about them throughout the entire war. And Iran really built them up as insurance policies, as a way to say, you can't attack us without having basically World War III in the Middle East. What happened throughout this war is that very, very gradually, those proxies were chipped away one by one. The biggest one being Hezbollah. Hezbollah is by far Iran's most direct arm. It was, to some extent, in Iran ministry and Iran's military that was in southern Lebanon. They have largely been curtailed. They could not at all afford another major round with Israel. They may respond a little bit, but not a lot. They are in trouble politically in Lebanon. Then we have the fall of the Assad regime in Syria that has largely curtailed the different militias that were operating between Iraq and Syria. That was another thing that was taken out. The Houthis, still very potent, attacking Israel, firing missiles at Israel almost every day. But they also have signed their own deals with the United States. So to some extent, the threat of an entire Middle East going up in flames as a result of current action right now has to some extent been mitigated. I will say also, as the day went on and there was more and more indications that something may happen, different Iranian militias or proxies throughout Iraq and some in Syria started to indicate that they are going to attack U.S. bases again.
Right.
Hasn't happened yet. Again, in the past, we've seen them happen very fast, but it hasn't happened yet. But in terms of the fact that the Cold War between Iran and Israel that has been going on for over 50 years turned into a hot, active war, that, I said several months ago, that's going to be the larger story of the Israel-Hamas war, right? Israel-Hamas war, unfortunately, is likely to end up in a muddled situation like in the West Bank with a semi-occupation in Gaza or not, maybe yes, maybe no. But the larger Middle East story that has changed is that from now on, every time there will be a flare-up within Israel and the Palestinians, Iran's involved actively. One more thing I'll say, Donald Trump said that himself. A week ago, when he was asked about the negotiations between Israel and Hamas, he sort of threw out a bombshell and said that the sides are negotiating and Iran's also involved. Iran's not supposed to be involved in those negotiations and never has been involved. So If that is true, then that also means that Iran is not only active militarily, but is also now a party to some extent to the negotiations where we've ended up now.
All right, Lone Austin, let's get the viewers up to speed.
let's
We're at the
see.
bottom of the hour here as we are getting these reports in from both Israeli sources, Iranian sources, and the Associated Press that Israel has launched a preemptive strike or strikes on Iran, especially in the capital of Tehran. We also have these live vantage points there. This one is over Jerusalem. We also have another one over Jerusalem as well. And this one we have is over Tel Aviv at the moment. So according to the Associated Press, with a dateline in Dubai, that explosions rang out across Iran's capital as Israel claimed it was attacking the country. People in Tehran awoke to the sound of the blast, according to state TV in Iran. We're hearing from Israel's defense minister, his name, Israel Katz, announcing a quote-unquote special situation in Israel over Israel attacking Iran. There, to your point, Austin Westfall, there was no immediate word yet, according to reports, on what was struck. Alone, though, I have to ask you this. I have been talking about this very prospect for some time, that Israel could do this, but if they were going to do this in order to be successful, they would need U.S. assistance. We're getting reports from, according to my producers, the U.S. did not help, and the U.S. had no involvement. That's separate of an issue on whether or not the U.S. was aware. That's a separate question. But we're getting reports right now the U.S. was not involved and did not help Israel do whatever they did here. What does that mean? What does that foretell for the wider conflict, that Israel took matters into their own hands and went this alone?
So, sorry, I'm seeing those updates also in
Israel is
in Al Jazeera and in Reuters. They're reporting exactly that. They're reporting that sources in the United States are saying that they are not involved in the actual attacks. Now, that's an important wording. They're not saying that they were not informed in advance. They're not saying that they are not providing some sort of perimeter defense. They're not involved in Israel's attacks themselves. That's an important wording when it comes to the Middle East. You know, previously in the different rounds when, for example, Iran the first time launched cruise missiles and drones that took hours to get to Israel, Israel and the United States all participated in shooting down those projectiles. But there were lots of other countries, Jordan, even Qatar, the UAE, that all said, we're not actively shooting down any Iranian projectiles. We're not involved in this. But later it came out that what they were doing was providing aerial support. They were providing radar support. They were providing all kinds of things. So similarly, the United States is not saying that we know nothing about this. And I would imagine that if this came as a complete surprise to the United States, we would possibly see U.S. President Trump quite enraged at this point and putting out his own messages about stopping this. We've seen him get angry, Putin and Ukraine, and he's very capable of immediately putting out saying stop. The fact that this is a very, very sort of tempered response saying we're not involved tells me, likely at least, the United States knew that this attack was going to happen. That doesn't mean that they supported it.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
Throughout the day, the U.S. has repeatedly said that they do not want attacks on Iran until the negotiations have maxed themselves out. There were supposed to be different negotiation rounds that would happen on Sunday. Unclear right now if they're going to happen. Again, so far, we're not hearing of an all-out attack of Israel across all of Iran to destroy all the nuclear facilities. We're only hearing thus far of an attack that happened in Tehran. That doesn't mean we're not going to hear more. We're just in the initial half an hour of this. But there is some indication here that possibly, just possibly, the United States still wants to come in as a mediator. Very, very possibly, the United States is in touch right now with its proxies throughout the Middle East to tell them to talk to Iran or possibly even direct talks with Iran. To tell them we can stop Israel. There's an attack in Tehran right now. We can stop Israel. You have to tell us you're going to come to us. Again, that's all speculation on my part. But the fact that the United States is not denying any involvement, saying we're not involved in the attacks, but not saying we didn't know about it or that we're not providing support or assistance on the one hand. On the other hand, the U.S. did say that they don't want the attacks to come out until the negotiations are maxed out.
Well, to your point,
maybe
I mean,
this is just a warning
Bibi
shot.
Netanyahu and Donald Trump, they were on the phone. President Trump said that to Bibi Netanyahu on the phone. Don't attack Israel while these talks are ongoing. That was reported in Axios. Clearly, Netanyahu didn't listen.
I don't know how clear that is, because it is very unlikely Netanyahu at his current political state could not really withstand Donald Trump's wrath. If Donald Trump turns around tomorrow and says to Netanyahu, you know what, you screwed me with this and you didn't listen, and as a result, I am now going to, for example, not veto resolutions against you in the United Nations. I am, for example, going to stop weapons shipments to you. Trump is capable of doing this. We've seen what he does to allies even when he gets angry at them.
Trump is on board.
So I would be very surprised
this is part
if
of
this
the
was
plan.
done
Listen, this
as a
was
complete
obvious.
shock
It
to
was
Donald Trump.
horrible, and
I don't think Netanyahu would
happening.
risk that. I don't think he thinks that he would be able to
That's
withstand
why
that,
we're-
both in terms of the war, but politically. I do think that possibly
That's
Netanyahu
why
said,
our
look, we're going to carry
channel
this
is alive.
out,
You know,
but
that's why we're doing
let's
what
try to
we're
work
doing.
together to just make this a warning shot. Again, maybe not. We may see explosions going
And
off
this was
across
indeed-
Iran. I am surprised that on the one hand, we have seen this going off. On the other hand, I keep on checking my phone to say, okay, where are the explosions in the main nuclear sites? The biggest and most important nuclear site in Iran is in an area called Natanz. This is a site that Israel, back in November, attacked the S-300 air defenses as preparation. It took out the air defenses there as preparation to a follow-up attack. That is the site that you really need to destroy if you want to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. Other sites in Isfahan,
we need another
other sites
source.
near
This
Qom,
source is
those
not
are the sites
getting
that really need to be
information, I can
attacked.
tell
The
you
fact that
that
so
for
far
sure.
there's only been an attack in Tehran, thus far at least, in the first hour, that we're not seeing explosions elsewhere. I'm assuming that there's a lot of talks that are going on behind the scenes right now to possibly see where this is going. I'd be very surprised if, in fact, Trump told Netanyahu not to do this, as you said, if Netanyahu just didn't listen. It would be a risk that would be far too big for him to take at this point, is my guess.
So, Alon, we are looking at, and we have been looking at images of Tel Aviv, the skyline in Tel Aviv. You and I have been on the air several times before where Iran has launched missiles toward Israel. And we were keeping a look on images like this because we were waiting to see if we would see any sort of ammunition or artillery come through and impact perhaps the Iron Dome. I need to make something clear to the audience. This is Israel launching preemptive strikes against Iran. So we're not expecting to see any activity on any of these live cameras that are in Tel Aviv or any of the cameras in Jerusalem. One of the reasons why I like talking to Alon during these breaking news times, by the way, is because he does research and he does read the news reports as they're coming out, whether it's sites that are in Hebrew, whether it's sites that are in Arabic. A lot of times, Alon, we're covering things here from the States, and we can only rely on sometimes English translations of some of the reports that are coming out of the region. Where are you watching right now to see how Iran responds to this? What media channels are you watching? And in what medium do they tend to respond? Are we expecting some sort of statement from Tehran? How do we usually end up hearing from them in the initial moments of something like this?
So I'll say a couple of things about that. First of all, I just want to say that right now there is an image coming out, which is an interesting image of a building that has been attacked in Tehran. This I'm seeing, to address your question, in Israel's official state news. There are video footages that have been from local people in Iran showing a building on fire. And it says that there are reports that in Israel's attacks, there were also attacks against the houses of senior political and military figures in Iran. That is a very, very interesting report, if that is true. If that is true, then that means that this attack is not just targeting nuclear facilities, but it is also targeting senior politicians and senior military figures in Iran.
What we anticipated.
That is where I get a lot of these news. I look, for example, at Twitter or X, whatever it's called today, and I look at different things I follow are Israeli state media and Iranian media and Al Jazeera and international sort of Middle East media reports. Most of the things, though, that first come out are reports on the ground. So, for example, again, I'm going to try to actually show this. This is a picture of a building that is on fire. This is a building that is on fire in Iran, and this is a report again from Israel. And the report then says that apparently houses are also being targeted in this attack, not just nuclear facilities. So when I say that, like I say, I don't know. I don't know. That's an image that was uploaded right now. When you follow news that is breaking like this all the time, you have to distinguish between the official statements. I don't expect to see any official meaningful statement from Iran at this point. Iran at this point, the most it could say, because their sort of national pride has also been hurt with this attack, the most they could say is, we will retaliate as we see fit. Israel is violating international law, etc. It's not going to tell us anything. The more important state publications that I'm looking at actually are in Israel, because Israeli publications right now, Israel knows what it's planning. So, for example, the fact that sirens, air raid sirens, went off across all of Israel, 100% of the country, went off at 3 a.m. So that was the indication, right, that Israel was bracing itself for a missile retaliation from Iran and wanted the entire country to wake up. Then, state media in Israel put out, the IDF in Israel, the military, put out another message saying, actually, we do not expect missiles right now. You have to stay near bomb shelters, but we wanted to make sure that everyone was awake. We wanted to make sure that everyone knew. So that tells me, okay, so right now, as far as Israel is concerned, it's not expecting immediate missile retaliation from Iran. Again, lending some suggestion that maybe Israel's not planning a full-on escalation at this point, but it wanted people to be alert of that. Iran doesn't know what Israel's planning necessarily. So from Iran, I expect more generic things at this point.
So, Alona, I just want to reiterate, because the reporting is somewhat sounder now than when we first came on the air with this, we were questioning what Israel was targeting, what they were striking. The Associated Press, with the dateline in Dubai, has it that an Israeli military official has confirmed to the Associated Press the attack has targeted Iranian nuclear sites. So, very significant there. That's according to the Associated Press. And now to my question alone. Has Israel ever struck nuclear sites inside Iran kinetically? Have they ever done that?
Andrew, I need to cut you off for 1 second. Very initial report, not substantiated, coming out of Iran. Again, this is bloggers in Iran that are reporting rumors that they are hearing that Iran's chief of staff may have been assassinated. The chief of staff of the military may have been assassinated. That's a news blast that I just got. Again, I cannot confirm that. I'm going to be looking into it right now.
All right, and yes, we'll wait for the official confirmation.
When I see a news blast like that, then I start to say, okay, let me see what else people are saying.
Yeah, that's my question about something like that is you follow these stories as they break all the time. You're always a news hound when it comes to breaking news out of the region. How often are reports out of there credible?
So typically when something like that breaks out, it's not unsubstantiated, but that doesn't mean that it's fully accurate. So likely there was an attempted assassination of the chief of staff. Typically when something like this breaks out and it comes from sources that I follow, because it's not just anyone on the ground, it's people who usually are more credible. Usually they have heard that there was an attack on, for example, the home, the house, the office of the chief of staff. Do they actually know that he was killed or not? That, I'm going to check. But typically it's not just out of the blue that nothing like that happened. One more thing that has just come out in Israel, again, is being reported. This is reported in one of the news sites. It says that the reason for the operation is that Iran broke through the point of no return that Israel had said that it would strike a couple of days ago. That means that Iran started enriching uranium to a level that it can create a nuclear bomb within a couple of days. And in Israel, it was said that Iran was trying to do this while stalling negotiations.
Israel is going under. They need to be around the shelters because they're anticipating to be attacked by Iran. Israel is anticipating a ballistic attack on Israel currently. So yeah, we're attacking the nuclear sites and the heads of the Iranian regime. We are in Israel. They are hoping. I don't want to talk, but I want to know what's happening right now with Ahmadinejad. We have previous videos from a couple of days ago, and we are comparing the Ayatollah to the Care Bear, and I want to know if the Care Bear is still alive, and the Care Bear Ayatollah. Netanyahu is giving a speech to the people of Israel to be extra careful. Israel is embracing, Netanyahu is giving a speech to the Israelis to embrace whatever is going to come at us right now. This is a serious point in the history of Israel, Netanyahu claims. Okay. The Iranian regime did enrich uranium to a high level degrees, and I don't need to hear all this speech. I can finish it for him, and I can tell you that the time has come to dismantle Iran's capabilities. That's it. Netanyahu is claiming that the Iranian put a big effort on creating a large arsenal of ballistic missiles, and Israel cannot continue accepting that. Then Israel is gonna dismantle that capability of Iran as well. It seems to me like we are going into a period of clashes. It seems like Israel is anticipating for an ongoing war. This is not going to be a 2-hour thing, from what Israel is, from the impression that I'm getting from Netanyahu's speech. Netanyahu is a little bit, his voice is a little bit, he needs a cup of water. That's what I can say. Yeah, he's claiming he's not going to wait for the next generation to solve the Iranian problem. I can understand that approach. Netanyahu is talking to the Iranian people now. He said, the Iranian people are not our enemy. He says the regime is, okay, Netanyahu is hoping for an Iranian revolution. I think the whole world is hoping for that, but we're going to see what's going to be the developments in Iran in the next couple of days. And does Netanyahu know if the Ayatollah is still alive? Did Netanyahu try to kill the Ayatollah? Israel is going to lead, I'm not interpreting Netanyahu, I'm just saying Israel is going to lead the world in the fight against terrorism because Israel is in the front of it. And that's what's going to be. The big question, come on, is the Ayatollah alive? Is the Ayatollah dead? Simple. Israel is shut down tomorrow. That's the security brief to the Israeli people tomorrow. There's no school, there's no work. Okay, Marco Rubio. The US is saying they're not involved in the strikes against Iran. It's an Israeli mission. Let's see what they're saying on Fox News.
Israel advised the United States they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. Austin, we also are getting this statement in from the IDF saying that Israel today is closer than ever to obtaining a nuclear weapon, which is why they decided that today was the day that they were going to do this. So we are at the top of the hour, and this is going to be our main story throughout the course of the evening. Austin?
One question that I have for Alon is, when we talk about the calculus that goes into military activity like this, is part of the calculation, hey, we want to be able to hit, but we don't want to do it in a way that means that they have to hit back.
I think that's the real question that
is that
everybody's
something that goes into the
anticipating
decision-making
right
with
now.
something like this alone?
So that's something that we've seen very often throughout the war. You and I have often talked about what we call tacit agreements. That, you know, it's very clear what are the borders of what you're allowed to do and not do, and how far do you go? Like, and do you break those tacit agreements or not? Again,
We
Israel,
have Fox News, we
Israel's
have
never
Al
admitted to this, but
Jazeera,
it
and
is
we have
very well known that Israel
Jerusalem
has
and live
nuclear weapons.
cameras
Yet, October
over
7th happens. Israel is attacked by the
Tehran.
Houthis, is attacked by Iran, it's attacked by
Excuse me,
Lebanon or by
over
Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel doesn't use nuclear
yeah, I
weapons.
think we're
Why?
watching now
Because it
over
has tacit
Tehran.
agreements. It has a situation where, like, okay, but it's very clear you can do that, but I am not going to break
We
the
have
bank.
Jerusalem,
Now, if you take it up a
we
step
have Tel
further,
Aviv,
I'll take it up a step further. And can we
we have
absorb this retaliation and
the
spiral
West
down? That's what
Bank
we saw between Israel and Iran
and
the
the
last few
Haifa
times.
skyline.
The two countries have
Then,
threatened to annihilate each other multiple times, yet they attacked, and both sides declared, and now we're done. We consider our retaliation complete. So that is a way of both sides to say, and we can spiral back down. In all that Israel is publishing right now, it is not giving any of those indications, except for that one statement that said we've completed our first round. In all that it's publishing, that it wants to remove the Iranian nuclear threat, that it is preparing for days of combat right now. So it's finished the first strike, but it's preparing for days of combat. Israel also just issued a mass draft order of thousands of reserve soldiers to report to military duty. Israel is indicating that it is ready for this to spiral further, is not giving any indication that it wants this to back down. The country that isn't giving any indication to that right now is Iran. Iran has thousands of missiles, hundreds of ballistic missiles that could hit Israel within a matter of 12 minutes. That's how long it takes for a ballistic missile to get from Iran to Israel. It has proxies across the Middle East. The fact that a switch hasn't been thrown and Iran hasn't gone up in flames in launching its retaliation against Israel is Iran to some extent signaling, at least at this point, we're not sure. We're not sure if this is going to a mass escalation or not. One thing I will say.
Let's go to Al Jazeera. See what Pinocchio
details on the cause, on the, let's say, exact places and further details on this strikes, and we are closely following developments to see what comes out.
Okay, that's the very latest from Tehran. And just another breaking news line to bring you that Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that Israel has launched these targeted military operations to roll back Iranian threats to Israel's very survival. And if you are just joining us, we are bringing you breaking news. Israel has launched strikes against Iran. It says it's targeting nuclear and military facilities. At least 6 explosions have been heard in the capital, Tehran. The US says they're not involved in the operation. Well, Tawhid, I believe, still joins us on the phone from Tehran. Tawhid, what is the very latest that we are seeing there? There have been several explosions. Let's just now turn to Benjamin Netanyahu, who is actually speaking at the moment. Let's take you to that live.
At the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies tried to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas, we devastated Hezbollah, we hit Iranian proxies in Syria and Yemen. And when Iran directly attacked us twice last year, we struck back inside Iran itself. Yet in defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those two countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. And Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make the nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. And this is why for decades, it's led millions in the chants of death to Israel and death to America. Today, Israel is responding to those genocidal calls with action and with a call of our own. Long live Israel and long live America. Our action will help make the world a much safer place. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in confronting Iran's nuclear weapons program. He has made clear time and again that Iran cannot have a nuclear enrichment program. Today, it is clear that Iran is just buying for time. It refuses to agree to this basic requirement of peaceful nations. That is why we have no choice but to act, and act now. The hardest decision any leader has to make is to thwart a danger before it is fully materialized. Nearly a century ago, facing the Nazis, a generation of leaders failed to act in time. They were paralyzed by the horrors of World War I. They were determined to avoid war at all costs, and they got the worst war ever. They adopted a policy of appeasement. They closed their eyes and ears to all the warning signs. That failure to act resulted in World War II, the deadliest war in history. It claimed the lives of 60 million, including 6 million Jews, a third of my people. After that war, the Jewish people and the Jewish state vowed never again. Well, never again is now. Today, Israel has shown that we have learned the lessons of history. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, we have learned the lessons of history. Stop them. When enemies vow to destroy you, believe them. When enemies build weapons of mass death, stop them. As the Bible teaches us, when someone comes to kill you, rise and act first. This is exactly what Israel has done today. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves. Over 3,000 years ago, Moses gave the people of Israel a message that has steeled their resolve ever since. Be strong and courageous.
Okay, then I'm
Today,
not really
our
sure,
strong and courageous soldiers and people stand together to defend ourselves against those who seek our destruction. And by defending ourselves, we defend many others, and we roll back murderous tyranny. Generations from now, history will record that our generation stood its ground, acted in time, and secured our common future. May God bless Israel.
We do not know
May God bless the
about
forces
the
of civilization
We do not know about the Ayatollah.
Thank you.
We want to know
Israeli
what's going
leader
on with the
Benjamin
Ayatollah.
Netanyahu with a message to his people about why he made the ultimate call, the ultimate decision to launch this attack, launch these strikes on Iran here. So in case you missed that, we're going to be replaying those messages, those comments throughout the course of the evening. This is going to be our main focal point, our main story throughout the course of the evening, as so much more reaction coming in, and we'll have to wait and see when the sun does come up over the skies of Iran, what the damage Israel has wrought against its sworn enemy. You heard there from Bibi Netanyahu say, when he said, when an enemy threatens to kill you, threatens to destroy you, believe them. And that is what Israel has done there. We still have so many of these live vantage points in and around Israel, there in Jerusalem, there in Tel Aviv, also in southern Israel, looking into the Gaza Strip. And really, I'm now Des, don't you worry. You're in good hands with my colleagues Christina Evans and Austin Westfall. More coverage on the Israeli strikes inside Iran when we come back.
Received a serious blow to the Iranian Air Force. We're not. Let's see if we get the footage coming in. Yeah, the phone is moving. And let's say go back to Al Jazeera.
In Washington, D.C. Alan, Benjamin Netanyahu there thanking the U.S. president. What are your thoughts there?
Okay.
Well, clearly Benjamin Netanyahu knows how to play Donald Trump, a man who, of course, has portrayed himself as the most pro-Israeli.
Listen to the Israel news. Let's see. We have been preparing in Pinocchio news. You know, we have been giving a push the last week or two. You know, this wasn't anticipated. This happening. You know, in the last the last 2 days when Trump took his forces, evicted the embassies, it was super obvious. So this is how stuff happen in the world. They're just preparing the people in Israel to be in the shelters and how to prepare everything, and just it seems like Israel is going to a period of clashes with Iran, like I mentioned, and it's a different kind of feeling from what I'm getting from the Israeli. Before it was more like a 24 hours of embracement. It seemed like they're preparing the Israeli people for a period of time, and yeah. So in Israel, they're calling the Godfather night for the Iranian head of regime, and is that a possible scenario that actually happened? Okay, they're saying Israel eliminated the head of the Iranian army.
Launches them, and
Let's see what they say in Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera.
Balance of power of the different actors in the Middle East. Iran is a big rival of most of the Middle Eastern countries. It is a big rival.
Okay.
Agreement. As I say, that was April the 12th.
Al Jazeera.
And gave them a 60-day deadline. That's 61 days ago. We're also hearing from the senior Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He is saying that the Israeli decision is alarming, that it is a reckless escalation, it threatens lives and stability in the Middle East. And as I said, that view isn't confined just to Democrats. There are a number of Republicans and Republican supporters who say that Donald Trump should not get involved in this, that he was pursuing diplomatic efforts, something that he reiterated on social media in the last couple of hours, and really should leave the Israelis to deal with the consequence of this action. However, one of Donald Trump's closest allies in the Senate is Lindsey Graham. His response was that we should pray for Israel, but added, game on.
Okay, Noor, what do you make of the fact that what could this now mean for tensions? And I suppose the big word here is escalation.
That tells me something, and very possibly they are trying to activate their allies to say, look, tell the United States we'll come to the deal you want. Tell the United States we're willing to do that. Stop Israel now. And very possibly that's why Israel carried out this first attack against those senior figures, because this was its only chance before that would happen again. That's all speculation. I just am very surprised that we are not seeing that retaliation yet.
So, Alon, one thing that I'm going to be watching for as well, not only a response from Iran, but we've already heard the IDF go into detail about this. We've seen Netanyahu go into detail about this as well.
There are no shelters, and Palestinians are left on their own. There are no warnings that they can receive. There is nowhere for them to go. Israel will not be providing them with instructions. They will be looking on their phones, on their mobiles, to Israeli applications to see whether there are incoming missiles targeting the illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, trying to figure out what would be the safest room in their homes away from those locations. But that is the maximum kind of protection they can feel. The food on the shelves in those supermarkets are provided through commerce with Israel. If there's a disruption in that activity, then the markets are also affected. So there is a ripple effect here. In Jordan, where we are right now, this is something that is very concerning to the kingdom as well. The missiles going back and forth will be going over possibly Jordanian airspace, and the precarious nature of the situation in the region, which has been on fire for the past 20 months because of the genocide in Gaza, because of the war that never really stopped on Lebanon either, puts everybody in a very delicate situation. Nobody in the region wants to be involved in this war, but everybody will be affected. The prices of oil have already been affected. Currency will be affected. So the stability of the economies and the regimes around Israel will be impacted by Israeli actions. And there is very little that these governments can do to protect themselves from the fallout of such a violent clash between such powerful military actors, Iran on the one hand, but Israel on the other, knowing full well, of course, that the United States is a strategic, very important ally of Israel. It may not be involved in this strike, but the calculus in the Middle East would say, the wisdom, if you will, that the United States is not going to abandon Israel. So the discussions, one would guess, in the rooms of the various governments governments in the region would be what will be the next step for Donald Trump's administration. Will the U.S. get involved? How can we shield ourselves and protect our people from what's coming next? How wide will these fires that Israel just started reach in the region?
Let's go back now to Tawhid Asadi, who joins us from the Iranian capital, Tehran. What is the very latest there, Tawhid?
This is a developing story, and first we heard this report coming out about explosion in the capital of the country, several explosions, at least 6 of them, but there is a possibility for increasing that number, and it has been said that it happened across the capital. And now the latest line is that it's not only across the capital but across the country. Most important location outside Tehran I can refer to relates to the report that came from Iranian media outlet Press TV, saying that Natanz, which is known for hosting one of Iran's nuclear facilities, has been attacked, and the footage shows smoke coming out of that. And this is the state TV confirming these different explosions across the country and across the capital, saying that people have been killed. The footages from this explosions shows bodies of women and children being taken out from one of the scenes that explosions happened. The exact cause, whether it's an airstrike or anything else, it remains to be seen. There is no detail so far as we are speaking, but we know that there are at least a couple of points, one in the western part of the capital, Chitgar, another one in northeastern part of the capital, and a couple of these places under attack are residential. I saw a footage of a building which was attacked, and just one floor of that building was attacked. That shows a sort of targeted strike with a high precision. Also in other places we saw actually massive explosion that damaged the nearby buildings. And also it's coming at that day a research facility, again with no details on that, has been also attacked in the capital. And it happens all in the context of critically important political and diplomatic developments. First, we know that it happened after the adoption of a resolution at the Board of Governors of IAEA less than 24 hours ago. And also it happens after weeks of rhetoric that we heard from the Israeli side threatening to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, and now the Israelis are coming out to say that we were behind that. But it is not the first time that Iran is being hit by the Israelis. Earlier in October 2024, there was a wave of attacks on Iran by the Israelis, to which Iran responded. And back in time, military officials of the country said that in case there is going to be a repetition of such attacks in the future, Iran's retaliation is going to be much, much stronger. So now the situation seems very complicated, very escalated. The United States so far has announced that it's already informed, but is not going to get involved. That's what we know so far. But still, if the situation becomes more complicated, there is a possibility of expansion of this conflict. We know that what happened yesterday at the Board of Governors just injured the diplomatic trajectory, the talks that Iran is holding, and specifically the next round of talks between Iran and the United States, which was initially scheduled to be held on Sunday. But now the situation is different, and there is a possibility for cancellation of that round of talks, seeing the current situation. And also, we heard from the Imam Khomeini International Airport, the airport for Tehran, that flights have been all suspended until further notice, until they finish their investigation. But still, as I told you, the story is developing. We are receiving reports from different parts of the country about sounds of explosions being heard, but still we have to wait for further details coming out pertaining to this specific, critically important development that is taking place. It's going to pave the way for escalation. Iran is going to respond to that under this circumstance and seeing the previous statements, but still we have to wait for the next hours for further details to come.
Okay, and we are just seeing the latest pictures there, just to remind our viewers that if you are just joining us, we are bringing you breaking news that Israel has launched strikes against Iran. These are the pictures of those strikes that you are seeing coming into us. So residential buildings, reports that residential buildings have been hit, and hearing from our correspondent Tawhid there in Iran, in the capital Tehran, saying that women and children have been injured, potentially killed in those strikes. So if we now bring in our correspondent Ali Hashem here in the studio, we're seeing those very dramatic pictures of those strikes. These are wide-scale, widespread attacks, and the likelihood is there that many people have been injured and killed, and as we've been hearing there, potentially women and children among those. In terms of Tehran's escalation and then how they will respond, what are we likely to see there?
Well, absolutely, this is, as I've been saying, this is a new status quo. And given these new givens that we have, and Iran being attacked directly, the next steps by the Iranian leadership are going to be crucial to understand the direction of this conflict. Where are we going? The Israelis are keen to...
Yeah, more like that, better. Israel is bombarding Iran as we speak. The other news, they're not showing you exactly what's going on. On the top right, I'm anticipating to see some fireworks over Israel as well. Israel, in the Israeli news, they're just talking some whatever. Also not important so much. Yeah, that's the thing. The Houthis Fox News over Jerusalem.
After its direct retaliation. And then after those proxies is activating agents within Israel. The two countries, Iran and Israel, have been working for years to plant spy networks throughout each other's countries. In Israel, we've seen this with the Mossad being very, very active within Iran. We have also seen an increasing attempt of Iran lately
Right now,
to
everybody in
develop spy
Israel are
networks
doing their
within Israel.
preparations.
So far, they have
People in
seemingly
Israel,
been
not
less
everybody have
successful.
shelters.
However,
They
there
need
was
to.
a newsflash that came out an hour ago that all of Israel's leadership has
There's
been
some
moved to
logistics
secure
now
locations.
go,
That could
go,
be defensive
going on
from
with the
ballistic
Israeli
missiles,
people,
but equally it
but
could be an attempted defense against an assassination plot. Iran in the past has
right
tried to assassinate
now,
Israel's former chief of staff, Moshe Bughi Ya'alon. That attempt failed, but
4:40 in the morning
we don't actually
in
know.
Israel.
Again, October 7th has taught us to never
I
say
think
never.
a lot
We
of
don't
people
actually
are
know who
awake.
might be a part of Iran's spy network in Israel. So that is the third level of retaliation that Iran may have, is to try to activate its own spy networks within Israel. Again, until now, we've not seen Iran's response. My bet is that we will see a direct response from Iran against Israel. If there is any retaliation, we will see Iran launching ballistic missiles against Israel, because that keeps it within the rules of the game between Iran and Israel. The minute proxies start to attack the United States is involved. Trump hates
Israel is embracing, and they should. And they should. Israel is gonna absorb. The Iranian regime is a capable regime. We basically, God bless Israel, and God is with Israel, and the truth is with Israel. And this world propaganda nonsense, Hamas is supporting countries and world leaders and demonstrations. It's not relevant. Israel is gonna do whatever Israel needs to do, and the kids in the university can shout and cry. And I am not interpreting the Gal Shani, the Israeli head of army, the new one, changed. My bad, Gal Shani. I forgot the name of this thing. Yeah, in the last couple of days, they have a facts in Israel that the Iranians are trying to reach a nuclear bomb in a fast way. They're preparing their ballistic missile plan. This was something that Israel could not. Okay, it's possible that Soleimani, Hussein Suleiman, still.
that shows a massive development that is taking place. The air defense system of the country is set to be activated under 100% preparation. And we have to again keep in mind that it's happening following previous attacks of the Israelis on Iran, one of the most important of which could be mentioned as what happened on October 2024, but still there is a long list of other obnoxious behaviors that Israelis have conducted on Iran, including cyber attacks, including assassination of Iranian commanders outside the country, in Lebanon, in Syria. And now we see a new round of unexpected, unprecedented escalation that could pave the way for any unexpected scenario down the road. Last time when such a strike happened, Iran said that its retaliation is going to be strong if such strikes will be repeated, and now we see a repetition of such a strike. This time it seems that the attack, the strike from Israelis is stronger, and as Iran previously mentioned, there is going to be a retaliation. So we are expecting not only for statements, not only for diplomatic courses of action, but for practical actions from Iranian side for the next hours and days down the road. And now we've got a report coming in on the confirmation from Tasnim news agency saying that the assassination of IRGC commander Hossein Salami is confirmed. This is what we have from Tasnim news agency, a news agency which is close to IRGC. So we can now say with a great amount of certainty that the head of IRGC has been assassinated in these strikes, but further details are just coming in as we are following the development, and we will see what happens next.
Okay, yes, and that report also being shown on Iranian state television that the head of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard is, as they've said, feared dead after the Israeli attack. Let's go to Noor O'Day, who joins us from Oman now, and the military chief of staff saying, and the latest line we're getting into us, that we are prepared across all borders. I warn anyone who will try to challenge us, they will pay a heavy price.
That's right, and that is in reference, of course, to Gaza, to Lebanon, to Syria, and others. Let's remember, Israel considers itself to be carrying out a multi-frontal war. Netanyahu always says there are 7 fronts at least in this war. Now that this confrontation with Iran has begun, the strike on Iran has begun, Israel will begin to posture itself and to present a very strong defensive posture and warn any actors in the region from attempting to, attack Israel or to carry out any actions in support of Iran. We are also hearing more about these attacks. The Israeli Army radio says that in addition to the airstrikes, which continue, they have not stopped. In addition to that, the Israeli Mossad, the external intelligence service, carried out several sabotage activities and attacks inside Iran. There are also reports and leaks in the Israeli media talking not just about the assassination of the top chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, but rather a very large number of senior military commanders, in addition to prominent academics and nuclear scientists. So we wait, of course, to hear confirmation from Iran, but the news in Israel, the leaks in Israel say that the Israeli army estimates that their assassination, their targets for assassination have been, in fact, hit, and they've been hit successfully. So this is a very large-scale attack, not just on military installations, but also on the people who could potentially be making the decisions about what Iran can do next, how Iran can respond to this attack, which continues as we speak. The Israeli military radio keeps saying that the attack will happen in waves, and those waves will continue, and there will be hundreds of munitions used in the attacks.
And I just want to remind our viewers, if you're just joining us, about those attacks. There's breaking news that we have now coming into us over the last couple of hours that Israel has launched strikes against Iran. You are seeing the latest pictures of what appears to be residential tower blocks, flats that have also been targeted, and reports coming into us of women and children potentially injured and killed in those attacks. Ali Hasham joins us, our correspondent in the studio here. Ali, we were speaking earlier about the fact that these attacks have happened in different areas of Tehran, but also different areas of Iran. Can you tell us more about, there seems to be two different sorts of attacks here, some targeted and others slightly different?
Well, it's clear this is a multi-layered attack. Airstrikes or whatever strikes, surface to surface, submarines or airstrikes, because we need to confirm this, first of all, that targeted
The Israelis are just preparing
an all-out war between the two sides, something that the Americans would be dragged into that. And this would change the face of the region in a very serious manner.
Okay, Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, director of Diplo House, a think tank focused on foreign policy. Thank you for now. I just want to remind viewers, if you're just joining us here on Al Jazeera, that we are bringing you breaking news lines that Israel has launched strikes against Iran. It says that it is targeting nuclear and military facilities. Now, there have been at least 6 explosions, multiple explosions since those reports of the several coming in initially, and you are seeing the latest pictures there of those attacks. Well, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has commented on Israel's strikes on Iran. He said tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Rubio said Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for self-defense. He continued, President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Rubio warned, let me be clear, Iran should not target US interests or personnel. Let's speak with Alan Fisher, who joins us live from Washington, D.C. So Marco Rubio there, Alan, making it clear then that this is Israel's action against Iran and not the US's.
But what is interesting in the statement that Benjamin Netanyahu made in the last hour, he thanked the US, he praised Donald Trump, and he warned that this was an attack because it also was a threat to the United States, perhaps at some point down the line, effectively tying them into the action tonight. Sorry, that's just a contact being in touch. Essentially tying the United States into the action that they have taken tonight. And that perhaps suggests that they are keen to see the US help them protect Israel should Iran decide to take any action. What is also interesting to note, a couple of important things. First of all, on March 26th this year, Tulsi Gabbard gave evidence to congressional committees, and at that point she said, as far as she was aware, Iran was not working to build a nuclear bomb. Tulsi Gabbard is the Director of National Intelligence in the United States. That was March 26th. And on April 21st, Donald Trump said that it was important that Iran came to the table to negotiate seriously about its nuclear program, and if it didn't do so within 60 days, then it could face military action. As I say, that was April the 12th. That was 61 days ago.
OK, let's turn now to David DeRoche, who is a professor at the National Defense University and a former Pentagon official. He joins us now from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us. Hearing then there from our correspondent in Washington, D.C., that the Israeli Prime Minister being very clear that he thanked the US President in his address to the public. So clearly the Israeli Prime Minister keen to secure and let the world see that he is very strong when it comes to his relationship with the US President. And what do you think that the US, though, what will the administration do from here?
It's not the answer you want, but it remains to be seen. I mean, I'm not sure how much you can read into making effusive remarks about Donald Trump other than the fact that the United States is very important to Israel, and Donald Trump is...
Next hours. And so, again, we've been on top of this breaking news here alongside with us from the Foundation of the Defense of Democracies, Joe Truzman, helping us to make sense of this breaking news that's coming there out of the region. Of course, the biggest thing being that Israel has had some targeted attacks there on Tehran. We're seeing and we're just expecting to see as this could be more rounds coming as well. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on this here on Live Now from Fox. Joe, we appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to slide away for a quick 2-minute commercial break. On the other side of that, though, we're going to continue on talking about the region, leaving you with a shot there as the sun is beginning to rise there in Jerusalem as well. We're going to stay right here on top of this breaking news, new information continuing to come out. Stay with us on Live Now. were targeting some of these nuclear facilities there in Iran.
So very likely this is going to look different than the way the wars in the Middle East have looked since October 7th. It is possible that we will see, the sides declaring war, but again, that could change if Trump, we saw India and Pakistan rising up towards war, and then all of a sudden we had, in turn, Trump coming in and brokering a deal between the sides. So possibly we'll see something like that there. We will definitely not see a deal between Israel and Iran, but we may see the sides spiral down. If it does escalate towards all-out war, it's going to look very different than the wars that we've seen in the Middle East. The Middle East has seen wars like between Iran and Iraq in the 80s. It has seen wars between Israel and Syria and Egypt. Then it has seen the more asymmetrical warfare between Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Hamas. All of those have involved a lot of air activity, naval activity, but the bulk of the fighting ended up being ground activity. The bulk of the fighting, when push came to shove, when it was not just these limited escalations, but instead larger actual wars, it ended up being invasions on the ground. That was the big change that happened in Israel and Hezbollah, right? We saw for over a year the attacks between Israel and Hezbollah. They fired rockets, Israel carried airstrikes, and that was it. When things escalated, when Israel invaded Lebanon, we're not going to see a ground invasion between Israel and Iran. It just geographically is not possible. You'd have to go through Iraq and Syria or Iraq and Jordan in order to get there. So that's not going to happen. So what does this war look like at this point? We're going to be looking at both sides. If, again, this escalation does continue to take off, we're going to look at both sides trying to get symbolic victories. Iran is going to fire likely barrages of hundreds of missiles simultaneously, hoping that between Israel, the United States, maybe Jordan, everyone who tries to intercept them, at least 3 or 4 get through. If they fire hundreds of missiles, 3 or 4 get through. If one of those happens to hit Israel's parliament, happens to hit a holy site in Israel or Israeli airport, that to them is a victory. And the war is going to be about those symbolic victories. Similarly, Israel is going to try to target symbolic assets in Iran. Less likely that we're going to see attacks against parliaments and things like that. More likely against the things that are important to the Iranian regime. Those nuclear facilities, possibly sites of the top senior figures, maybe the house of the supreme leader. But that is going to be the nature of this warfare. It's going to be a lot less about taking over territory and doing things that could actually, on the facts on the ground, lead to the other side surrendering. And instead, we're going to see much more an attempt to use aerial attacks in order to carry out those symbolic victories. Right now, Israel has had the last word as of the current hour, 10:15 on the East Coast here, 7:15 on the West Coast in the United States. But again, we are expecting Iran's retaliation to come sooner rather than later. I will say again, I am quite surprised that we've actually not seen Iran's retaliation yet. I think that may speak to the extent
in terms of securing a deal on Iran's future nuclear policy. Does that mean that those talks are now in jeopardy in your view?
Their future of nuclear.
It's clear now that, more than before, it's clear now that the talks were the carrot part of the story, and now the threats and these strikes are the stick part of the story. So with this situation, the talks doesn't mean anything anymore. Yep. And I would not expect the negotiations to continue, and I would expect a cancellation of the meetings on Sunday, because it has no meaning for Iranians to sit at the table with the Americans, who are staunch supporter of the Israelis, and they have been involved in this attack. They cannot distance.
As a result of the current security situation, we first have a statement. So they say this. Israel, as a result of the current security situation, the U.S. Embassy has directed all U.S. government employees and their family members to shelter in place until further notice. This is provided for your information as you make your own security plans. The entire tweet gets cut off, but I've got the full thing in front of me. It says, The U.S. Embassy reminds U.S. citizens of the continued need for caution and increased personal security awareness, including knowing the location of the nearest shelter in the event of a red alert, as security incidents, including mortar, rocket, and missile fire and unmanned aircraft system intrusions, often take place without any warning. They say the security environment is complex and can change quickly. As you and I have alluded to, Alon, you and I have had endless conversations over the air since October 7th, 2023, about the ongoing situation in Gaza, the wider escalations that happen from time to time. One of the underlying fears this entire time has always been the risk of some sort of wider conflict. Whenever things would heat up between Israel and Hamas, whenever things would heat up between Hezbollah and the IDF, we would always talk about, oh man, this could lead us to some wider breakout. Ultimately, the biggest fear was some sort of war between Iran and Israel. Was that not the chief concern with this entire thing as far as escalation goes?
Absolutely, but I think that up until now, one of the things that has been always on the radar is things that escalate, quote unquote, unintentionally, right? I mean, it's hard to discuss war and death and these airstrikes we're seeing that are in, you know, civilian areas. It's hard to discuss this in, like, you know, well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And, like, you know, is it okay if it's organized or orchestrated in advance or spiraled out of control? But if we do allow ourselves to talk about things like that, then the fears up until now have largely been escalations that would spiral out of control without the sides intending. Largely, we saw that between Israel and Hezbollah. You know, Israel and Hezbollah had been trading blows at each other in those tacit agreements between each other. They fire rockets at northern Israel. Israel retaliates against southern Lebanon, and the two sides then go to sleep well at night. And then all of a sudden, a Hezbollah missile manages to evade Israeli air defenses, lands in a soccer field in northern Israel, kills 12 children. Israel then retaliates and kills Hezbollah's second-in-command, Fuad Shukr. Hezbollah launches more missiles. All of a sudden, within 2 months, Israel's invading Lebanon. But that was unintended when Hezbollah fired that initial missile. That was not what they thought was going to happen. They assumed that it was going to be intercepted the same way all their missiles had been intercepted thus far. So the larger fear until now has really been about a spiral and an escalation that would happen without the sides actually intending, with one side doing something that they thought was going to be just within the rules of the game, so to speak, of warfare in the Middle East, and all of a sudden that's spiraling out of control.
India, still
That's
they
a
had
little
the
different
plane
here.
crash
There
earlier.
is,
Like,
I think, very little chance
chill.
that Israel
The
could
world
carry
is
out
crazy.
an attack and assassinate seemingly all the heads of Iran's military and scientific leadership, and not expect this to escalate to something further, not expect that Iran would actually retaliate in a very escalatory manner. Now, maybe Israel assumes that it will do this, and Iran in turn will look to the United States to calm the situation down. Maybe Iran will retaliate in a barrage of missiles, and that's it. And maybe that will be the case. But the fear of larger escalations until now has really been from something that would be unintended. You know, similarly, the Houthis. We've talked about this many times. Over the last 2 weeks, the Houthis have launched, I'm counting in my head, but I'm going to say at least 10 ballistic missiles from Yemen to Israel. Each and every one of these was intercepted, and thus we don't even hear about it. It wasn't reported on any news sites. I didn't talk about it in my news updates. I don't think you talked about it in yours. Now imagine one of those missiles is not intercepted, but instead it manages to hit Tel Aviv and kills 30 children because it landed in a kindergarten. Or it manages to hit Israel's parliament or the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif in Jerusalem. All of a sudden, we're looking at World War III in the Middle East. So there's a lot of things that could be unintended escalations that would happen between the sides, thinking, I'm just playing right now, but actually it goes further. At this point, it seems that Israel is very clearly indicating it's not just playing now, it wants things to go a step further. There are reports, again, as of 20 minutes ago when I jumped on, that said that Israel is launching its 5th wave in Iran. I'm going to take a look right now and see if there's more that are happening right now. Israel's looking at this, though, as another escalation. What we don't know is how far this goes. is this now an initial folly of Israel that's going to be maybe for 6 hours, 7 hours, and then Israel will say, we're done. We crippled Iran's nuclear facilities enough. Iran can retaliate if it wants, or we can be done. Or is Israel saying, okay, we're in this now for the long haul. We're in this for the all-out war. And like I've implied already several times, almost everything here depends on what U.S. President Trump says. If Trump calls Netanyahu and says, stop, enough, Netanyahu will stop. Israel has its own security considerations, but Israel is today more dependent on the United States than it ever has been in its history. Israel will stop. In turn, if Trump says, I am fed up with Iran stalling, go ahead, continue attacking until they come to me begging for a deal, likely that will continue. So at this point, we're all waiting for that, and that's why I'm, to some extent, surprised that the National Security Council has called for another 11, 12 hours from now, so we're all waiting.
All right, again, Dr. Alon Bernstein, he's been with us here as we're talking about the very latest that's there in the Middle East. If you're just now joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we want to reset for you. You're just turning on your TVs. You're seeing our banner in red there because of this breaking news that we've now been covering for the last 2 hours at this point. So we do know that this is Friday there on the other side of the world. It is just after 6 a.m. there in the Middle East. But we do know that Israel attacked Iran's capital early Friday morning with explosives booming across Tehran, as Israel said that it had targeted nuclear and military sites. This attack, though, comes as tensions have now reached new heights there in the region over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program. So we've been getting in updates, as we now know, according to Iranian state media, that the head of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard is feared dead at this point. Of course, this is a major part of the internal structure there in the country as well. We've heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well, saying that Israel targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz and the country's ballistic missile program, as well as top nuclear scientists and officials. And speaking of that as well, putting up this tweet there on your screen, courtesy of Reuters, saying there that Iranian state TV says that nuclear scientists, there are 2 of them, have been killed there in the strikes that happened this Friday. So again, we wanted to reset, and our thanks again for Dr. Alon Bernstein for staying with us here for the last few hours, walking us through here because of his extensive knowledge there of what is happening in the region. We do want to continue on. I'll let you know an update as well that we have from here in the United States, showing you a live look at the White House. We do know that the U.S. is now planning to have a meeting. President Trump has called this meeting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. This is going to be an important meeting there between him and some of those top officials discussing what has happened, as well as continuing to look in, putting up this tweet as well that we have courtesy of Reuters, saying U.S. President Donald Trump will attend a National Security Council meeting Friday morning. This is according to the White House. So again, we'll continue to get updates as this is a major development there in the region, a region that has been in a lot of turmoil over the last few years. Of course, all of this initially coming to a head back on October 7th of 2023. Then we've been following these updates there so closely between all of this. All right, let's go ahead and continue now as we're moving forward there. Again, Dr. Alon Bernstein with us. I have to ask you as well, Dr. Alon, we do know that Israeli opposition leader, he's been a fierce Netanyahu rival and critic. Yair Lapid says that he has now extended his full support for the operation against Iran. His office says that it was notified in advance of this as well. When we're talking about what it means for a country when you're going into this level of uncertainty as you're moving forward, to have your opposition leader as well as your main leader sitting there, Benjamin Netanyahu, on one accord when it comes to this, is this a more stable Israel going into this conflict, being that these 2 major leaders are in agreement?
So,
Yes,
before I address
definitely.
that, something that just came in 10 minutes ago, there are reports in Iranian television that the chief of staff of Iran, Mohammad Bakri, is alive and is currently in the war room planning Iran's retaliation. So there were a lot of speculations that he had been assassinated. There were reports that the general staff is on fire from those attacks. Iran state TV did confirm that Hussein Salami and other prominent figures that was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has been killed. There was speculation about the chief of staff. Iranian television, again, not necessarily confirmed that's true or not, but Iranian television is saying that the chief of staff of the armed forces, Mohammad Bakri, is still alive and is actually right now planning Iran's retaliation. So that's just a thing about that. When I said before that it was, not confirmed that he was assassinated, now maybe he's leaning more towards that assassination attempt failed. In terms of Israel's internal political system, it's always a complicated situation within Israel because everyone within Israel's political establishment, with the exception of a few very, very specific political parties in Israel's parliament, almost are required to rally behind when there is a major attack that happens against an entity that is threatening Israel. The different parties within Israel, the left-wing parties, even those that are headed by, for example, Yair Golan, have stated right after October 7th that Israel should pound Hamas as much as it can. Now, a year, almost 2 years later, they are saying that Israel should seek some sort of agreement with the Palestinian entity, not with Hamas. But initially, when there is this threat against Israel, it's within the Israeli political culture and would be within the culture of most Western countries that when you're attacking the main enemy, the arch enemy, then everyone rallies together. There's a lot of critics in the United States of the war against Iraq back in 2003, much fewer critics of the war against Afghanistan in 2001. After 9/11, all sides, the most pacifist in Israel, in the United States, and the most hawkish, had to say that they are in support of attacking Al-Qaeda and rooting out the Taliban. Similarly, in Israel, there are some more fringe political actors that are saying that Israel should not aspire for war and instead should be accommodating in the Middle East. But across the mainstream political spectrum, everyone is going to be in support of an attack in Iran that neutralizes Iran's nuclear capabilities. So in this sense, Netanyahu is coming in a lot more unified, a lot stronger. But one of the things that also has to be remembered is in the world of politics in general, and in Israeli politics specifically, things only last as long as they're in the headlines. This is possibly going to spiral and escalate to a war that will now be an open confrontation between Israel and Iran for months. It could also end in a matter of days. Whenever it ends, things in Israel are going to go back to the same levels of polarization. And I almost guarantee you that there's going to be accusations against Netanyahu that he did this because this week his government almost fell and wanted there to be distraction. This will happen later. Right now, everyone's going to rally behind the flag. And I'll say in a word, similarly in Iran. In Iran, there is vast competition between two sides of the political spectrum. There are the more hawkish figures that support more predominantly the statements or the perceptions of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And then there's also the more moderates, the ones that say, okay, yes, we're all for exporting the revolution, but also we need a functioning economy and we can't actually spend all our money on our proxies. They are more supported by the current president. But right now, when Iran is being attacked, when Israel is assassinating prominent figures in Tehran, it is attacking the nuclear facilities in Natanz and in Iraq, and reportedly in Qom, at this point, everyone across the Iranian spectrum is going to be beating the war drums of retaliation against Israel. What happens after the initial response and what happens, that already will be up to politics. But right now, both countries, Israel and Iran, are very likely going to be unified behind now striking against the other one.
So Israel strikes Iran, as you mentioned, and as we just saw on the screen there, Christina, maybe we can bring that up one more time, about Iran saying that they will have a decisive response to Israel's attack. The AP saying that Iran's state-run news agency quotes an anonymous official saying Iran will have a decisive response to Israel's attack. As you alluded to, Alon, Israel knows that a decisive response is likely after such a strike that we're seeing tonight, at least 5 rounds, as far as we're hearing from you so far. How does that work into their calculus when they carry out something like this. They know that a response is expected, but ultimately, all the people in charge of the Israeli government, the Iranian government, is it commonly understood throughout all these entities that World War III is not something that anybody wants it to escalate to? There's always a sense of cooler heads will eventually have to prevail. There's a want for that, correct?
In theory, yes, but where most cases, I'm going to take this sort of, back it up a notch to look at warfare in general after World War II in the 20th and 21st century. In most cases, wars have not ended with a decisive defeat or decisive victory of either side. In most cases, we have not seen, like in World War II, with the enemy army, so to speak, completely taking over your country and dismantling it, the forces on the ground literally occupying your entire territory, and that is why you surrender. What we have seen mostly in warfare throughout the 20th and 21st century post-World War II has been countries that go to war and pound each other until a diplomatic resolution is reached. Sometimes that happens as a result of one country obviously being the victor, and a diplomatic resolution is reached based on what that country wants. Sometimes that happens because both sides realize, okay, enough's enough. But even in the cases of the United States and Iraq, for example, the United States took over Iraq, but then it didn't do what it did in Germany and Japan. Instead, it, quote unquote, gave Iraq back to the Iraqi regime, to a new regime, and tried to rebuild it up. So that is usually what we're seeing. Why is that important? Because when it comes to how far this is going to escalate, is this going to look at World War III? Clearly, both sides don't want World War III. Number one, that's true. Both sides, the leaderships of both sides really don't want to have to go back to their people the same way Lebanon and Hezbollah had to go back to its people and say, yeah, our country's now destroyed. We have very little to show for it. That's what Hezbollah is facing. That's why I said Hezbollah is now in a bind. They brought about the destruction of large parts of Lebanon as a result of Israel's attacks and had very little to show for it. So both Iran and Israel don't want this to escalate to the point where their countries are decimated with missiles, with constant attacks, and have nothing to show. On the other hand, because we are very unlikely to see one country overrunning the other country and forcing its surrender, ultimately what's going to happen is either side is going to come to the United States, to Russia, to China, to the United Nations, to some sort of international broker and say, okay, we're willing to insert here. Iran is willing to sign a nuclear agreement based on what the U.S. wants. Okay, the U.S. tells Israel to stop attacking. In turn, Israel's going to come and say, okay, we are willing to stop attacking if Iran does A, B, and C, stops funding its proxies, stops whatever. And that is the reason that while both sides have an interest in this not escalating to World War III, they also have a political interest in saying, yeah, but I don't care if it does. Because they want those international proxies to come back to them and say, no, please, please don't. Please don't, right? If you are willing to indicate that you are a responsible figure and don't want this to escalate too far, then you have a lot less leverage to international mediators to come at you and say, look, I'm willing to give you and I'll compel the other side A, B, and C, just don't do that. In turn, if you're willing to say, you know what, I don't care. I don't care. Let it be World War III. Again, we saw this Russia and Ukraine. Let it just continue forever. Then you have a leverage. They decide to say, okay, what can I give you to convince you to stop? And that is the reason that we're going to see a lot of rhetoric coming out of both sides saying, all bets are off. All bets are off. Israel is saying we're going to remove the nuclear threat. We are preparing for days of escalation. Again, we have to understand this. Imagine this in the United States. Israel operated all of its air raid sirens throughout the entire country. 100% of the people were awoken at 3 a.m. And this was just a warning. This was just a warning of Israel to its own population saying, everyone be aware, war may be starting, know where your bunkers are, be prepared to go into shelters. Imagine that happening in the United States. Israel doing that is signaling, we're prepared to go all out. You can fire missiles at our population. We've warned them. We were willing to wake them up at 3 a.m. with air raid sirens. Do your worst. Does Israel actually want its population targeted by hundreds of missiles? Of course not. But it's showing it's willing to do that. Similarly, Iran is not saying so far, oh God, we were attacked so badly. What can we do to stop this spiral into World War III? It's saying, okay, our response is going to be decisive. It's going to be vast. It's going to hurt a lot. Both sides have an interest in showing we're willing to go all out as a way to try to get the US, the EU, different actors come in and say, no, 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 please stop. What can we give you to convince you to stop, so to speak? I think that's what we're going to see in terms of rhetoric. That's why it's very important to distinguish rhetoric from action. You know, when we were talking originally, what is Israel doing? It said Israel says it's going to remove the nuclear threat, but I was only seeing attacks in Tehran. Once I see that Israel's attacking other places, say, okay, they're actually doing that. What they say matters, but actions also matter here.
They do, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I want to show you some new video that we're just now getting into our newsroom as well. More video of the aftermath. This is going to be the first time our viewers are as well seeing this. Dr. Alon, as we're watching this video, what are your thoughts going through your head seeing the impact that was made by these targeted attacks? Again, this has been confirmed by Israel, talking about what they intended to do there in Tehran, but we're seeing these buildings. I mean, we're seeing people's their items. It seems like these might have been even residential buildings. Don't want to speculate too much here at this point, as again, more information is still continuing to come in. But this response is ongoing, and they're in Tehran to what happened.
So I'll say that this definitely look like residential buildings, and there is a big distinction between the attacks that were reported that happened in the nuclear facilities in Natanz and in Qom, and the fact that the headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards were on fire. Those videos are not nearly so up close, right? Where the nuclear facilities are in Iran, different bloggers, like these are videos that are recorded from people with their phones in Iran. You can't get that close to the nuclear facilities in Natanz or in Qom, certainly not in Iraq. It's in the middle of the desert. So one of the reasons that we're seeing this is those things are going on, but we're seeing those pictures of the attacks against the nuclear facilities or the bases much more from afar. So therefore, first of all, I think it's very fair to speculate that this is residential buildings. These attacks occurred at 3 a.m. Israel time. That would be, depending on where in Iran, 4 or 5 a.m. in Iran. Very likely the attacks were targeting people in their homes, and they were targeting, again, the chief scientists, the chief of staff, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards in their homes, in their residential areas. One of the things that also comes to mind when we see these attacks is the level of precision. I'm not saying that uninvolved people were not killed, but the level of precision that seemingly may have been in these attacks. When we look at those buildings, the buildings themselves were not entirely leveled, right? We look at the picture behind this individual speaking. There is an attack that happened in a specific home, in a specific target, like we see right here. What does that tell me? That is, I'm not there preaching that, you know, Israel is the most accurate military in the world or things like that. But what that does say is that Israel is also calling upon its vast network of intelligence. It does not just know that whoever happened to be in this building, whoever's home that is, that they live in that building. It did not decimate that building the same way that it did when it attacked Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut, where 300 people were killed because 8 buildings in the area were destroyed and brought down to the ground in that attack. Instead, these are very precision missiles, and that is also Israel doing 2 things. One, it is Israel specifically targeting, trying to kill only the individuals at once. But more importantly, again, that is sending a message to Iran. Anyone in the Iranian regime looking at this right now, let's just say, for example, that may have been the home of Hussein Salami, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. I don't know that, but we know that he was assassinated. So if that was his home, if I am right now the deputy of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, I pretty much know that Israel knows exactly where my home is, where my bedroom is, and possibly what time I go to sleep, because we can see what precision they carried out that attack. That is sending a signal also. When Israel, for example, assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, in Tehran, did not assassinate him where he was housed his entire career since he became the external leader in 2017 in Qatar, but in Tehran in a hotel room, specifically killing him and only him. Back in July of 2024, that again was sending a message. It was saying our agents are everywhere. We know where you are. We know who you are. And that also is part of the warfare. It's psychological warfare against Iran, but it's also signaling you want to be careful how far you take this because you never know. You think you're safe, but you might be next. We know everything about you. I think that's what Israel's doing by specifically targeting that home in that building of the different pictures we're seeing.
All right, I appreciate you for breaking that down because that is so key when we're talking about these strikes, how targeted they are, the level of psychological warfare, as you put it, because that certainly can play a huge role as well. So we also did just get in another statement. I want to read it out for folks at home. Dr. Alon Burstein has been here with us for the last few hours. Of course, if you're just now joining in here on Live Now from Fox, there have been some significant reports there as we now have confirmation of Israel's targeted attacks there in Iran. So let's go ahead and continue to get to that updated statement. I want to read this out. This is a statement from Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. The state of Israel has launched Operation Rising Lion tonight against Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure with the aim of eliminating an existential and immediate threat to the citizens of Israel and the entire world. The Iranian regime is blatantly violating international agreements, advancing towards nuclear weapons, and operating a regional terror network. When the world is silent, Israel is acting. I call on the UN Secretary General and the members of the Security Council. This is a moment to make moral decisions. Stand by Israel, or you will be partners in a dangerous silence. Unlike the past, today we have a state, we have an army, and we are not waiting for those who want to destroy us to surprise us. Again, that was the official statement there from Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon. He's calling right now on the UN Secretary General and the other members of the Security Council to take a moment to stand with Israel. I have to ask you, what is your response to hearing him say that statement? Of course, we know that there have been some back and forth between the UN and how Israel has handled this conflict in the past. But let's talk about this statement here. What weight is that going to have moving forward?
I think that this is an interesting situation with regards to Israel and the United Nations. On the one hand, there's an automatic block vote against Israel in the General Assembly. And this has been going on for years. A lot of different research about how and why that happens. I'm not going to get into that. It's a fact that whenever there is a vote leveled against Israel, condemning Israel, Israel's condemned in the United Nations more than all other countries combined. So on the one hand, there is this automatic bias against Israel, and Israel's largely saved each time by the U.S. veto in the Security Council, which is, again, why I'm saying if U.S. President Trump were to tell Israel not to do this, Israel wouldn't do this. It cannot afford to alienate the United States. At the same time, there are a lot of international actors in the world that are looking at Israel neutralizing, possibly neutralizing, or at least attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, that are either very quietly under their breath going to take a sigh of relief or publicly going to take a sigh of relief. Among these are a lot of Middle East actors who will not say so publicly because they do not want to make an enemy out of Iran or the Shiite population in their country, but countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Oman, possibly even Jordan and the new regime in Syria, all of these countries are threatened by Iran strengthening. And all of these countries have either been attacked by Iran or its proxies, or are in constant threat that if they don't act a certain way, they will be attacked. So they are not going to say so publicly, but very likely they are at least looking at this, hoping it doesn't spiral into something bigger, but saying they would like to see the nuclear threat neutralized. Then there's other countries throughout the world that are not solely within the Israeli-Arab conflict. Here I'm looking more to Asian countries, looking at India and countries like Afghanistan, as well as European countries that also don't want to see Iran getting nuclear weapons. Maybe they're not as threatened as the other countries that I mentioned, but they don't want to see Iran getting nuclear weapons. All of that brings me back to your question about how is this going to play out in the United Nations. On the one hand, again, Israel is almost automatically condemned for most of its actions that it carries out militarily. Justified or unjustified doesn't matter. It's a fact. Israel is condemned for its actions in Gaza, it's condemned for its actions in Lebanon, for its actions often in Syria. And very likely we will still see a majority in the United Nations that condemns Israel.
The airplane you're seeing is an Israeli airplane over the skies in Iran. Um, okay, we're hearing the bombardment in Iran continues.
Annual event. He made some remarks, but it was more about the weather and the picnic. And then he retired. It was more about the weather and the picnic. And then he retired to the White House itself. At that point, we are told he went to the Situation Room. He's due to be back there at 11 o'clock Washington time tomorrow morning, where he'll meet with his national security team. We can be sure that he has been briefed about what has been happening. And certainly we know that the United States was expecting something of this magnitude, given that just 24 hours ago, just over 24 hours ago, they announced the partial evacuation of their embassy in Baghdad and said that other non-essential staff, if they wanted to leave,
confirm those again as we're going throughout this evening. But again, these updates are coming in minute by minute in this situation as it is very tense. But again, if you're just now joining us, you may not have seen this video footage as well that we have. I want to show you this vantage point that some of those cameras were able to capture in the region. This is the moment that some of those targeted attacks began near Tehran. And it's some of these cameras that are capturing the impact that it made, flashes of light there going across your screen, just able to see what truly is happening there in the Middle East amidst all of this as well. So in the waking hours as the sun began to rise there in Tehran, also showing you a few vantage points that we've seen in response. There are several buildings there in the region that have suffered damage according to these attacks that have happened there as well. Also want to put up some of this video that showcases the smoke that was rising. And again, we've been showcasing some of this as this time has gone on. We've heard as
In Israel, they just preparing the people and the kids for tomorrow and for this day and what's gonna be.
So yeah, as always, Austin, nice to see you. So there's a couple of different reports that are coming in. In Israel, there are repeated blasts that are coming out that Israeli citizens should prepare for Iranian retaliation within the next 2 hours. Israel is preparing for the retaliation in the next 2 hours. In the past, we have seen that either through Israel's spy network or through other intelligence agencies, Israel has usually known when an Iranian attack is coming. The last time that the attack happened in November, Israel put out an announcement several hours before the attack from Iran saying Israelis should be prepared, something big may be happening. So very likely, that is why Israel's saying in the next 2 hours. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Iran is not going to go according to Israel's plan, but very likely we are going to see that retaliation soon. Something that is important also that the Israeli military, the IDF, just tweeted moments ago, it said that not a single anti-aircraft missile was fired at Israeli planes during their attacks thus far. Now, Iran certainly would not have stood by and tried to withstand Israel's attack. So that tells us something about Israel's intelligence, that it knew exactly where the air defenses were placed and how to bypass them. It also tells us something about Israel's previous attacks that we know all targeted the air defenses in Iran. But most importantly, what that tells us is up until now, we have seen the vast array of Israeli attacks against Iran, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but we have yet to actually see any Iranian response, not just in lack of attacking Israel so far or attacking U.S. interests so far, not even in attempts to defend themselves against Israeli Air Force as they were carrying out those attacks. We haven't seen any Iranian response, which very likely means that we will see it in the coming hours.
I am thinking about the party, the Nova Festival, what Hamas did in the Nova Festival. And it's connected directly. It's connected directly. The world can sit on the side and let Jews be sacrificed, but the Jews are not going to sit on the side and let Jews be sacrificed. They're going to prevent that from happening. They try to negotiate for 20 years, 30 years with Iran. The Palestinians is another, they just don't recognize Israel's existence. The Iranian people need to be, this is a celebration day for the Iranian people. There should be uprising in Iran. Iran should uprise.